Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Barcast TV. It is July 6th, 2024, a Saturday. I'm joined by four special guests here today, none other than Yudi, Blodir, Andy, and Raghna are joining us to talk about all things bar. We've got a lot to go over. You guys, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Barcast.
Hey, man.
Hello,
Hey,
everyone.
So maybe before we get into our first topic, Andy, congrats on winning that bar fight night that's been going on, like a weekly kind of casual tournament. Congrats on that.
Thanks. Daywalk as well. He was my
Yep.
partner.
That's right. Sorry, Day. Cool to see. Hope to see more of y'all out there. It's a lot of fun. So be sure to check that out on the main Discord. But that's not really what we're going to talk about today. Kind of like as a preview, we're gonna be discussing the Transport Con, Shuris, Resbots, mines, co-oping or communism, as it's kind of commonly known, sharing resources and units between players, and then like an air balance. So a lot to go over, guys. Transcon, Andy, do you have any thoughts on like the transporting the commander around, or like cheeses, or like?
I think it's definitely very strong at the moment, and if especially in organized team games, if one team isn't doing it, they're at a big disadvantage. So it would be nice to kind of have that balance readdressed a little bit, just so we can see a bit more different gameplay. And it's at the moment it's just a bit too strong, and it's getting a bit stale.
What about you, Chisato? Do you have any thoughts on the Transport Con?
I agree. I feel like it's something that really takes no skill to execute. I would say like anyone can pull it off, and you can really decide the game very early on, especially on the Big Ten games.
I'm gonna be honest, guys. I don't think it matters that much how strong it is, because look, at like some low level, someone's gonna use it regardless. Even if it was bad, someone would use it and ruin a game, and it's still unacceptable. Like no one gets to play the game when that happens. Like even if
well,
it wasn't strong, it would still be bad.
what it is that it makes the game very volatile.
Yeah, it does.
Uh,
That's the thing. Like no one gets to play a game when you have transport con. Like the game is over from that
Yeah,
moment.
exactly. That's why I don't like it either. Most games end in minute 4 just because of one guy.
okay.
Yeah, it's just volatile, and that's been an issue with the game since as long as I can remember.
Well, isn't it not an issue in like the original TA, right? Like the mechanic, like you could like pick up commanders and just like you could pick up any enemy commanders and drop them and like win the game, right? So
Yeah, that was even worse because what you used to do is you send 4 blitz and a transport com, and either they have to choose between degunning the blitz and then get picked up by the transports, or they would have to keep moving and die to the blitz and wouldn't be able to degun. But yeah, it's been a problem for so long. They tried all sorts of things, like making the commander worth 10,000 medals so that you wouldn't send it to the enemy, but that made the game even way more volatile. So they brought down the medal a lot after that. And yeah, every time that they look at something, they try something. It is fun, I think, to be able to transport your commander, especially in special situations.
for sure.
But not to com bomb, I think. That's never the fun part, I don't think.
Thank you for that. So I can share my screen, but this is what I have pulled up is a screenshot from PTAC's suggested changes that are being considered right now by the devs. Just give me 1 second and I can share my screen to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So there's like kind of two sides to these proposed changes to address the commander drops. There's like and transports in general. There's engine changes that are being suggested, so like how the transport actually moves around and like interacts with units, but kind of more immediately down here in new units and rebalancing is how they're thinking, is how the developers are considering and thinking about changing this mechanic. So basically what's going to be happening is the T1 transport as it is currently is not going to be able to lift commanders, and it's going to be renamed to like this light transport role, and a new T1 transport, a heavy transport, is going to be added to the game that's capable of picking up commanders, and it's going to have higher health, higher cost, but this is like kind of what they're thinking of is how to take out the immediate early part of the early game commander drops, and still having it available as like a in multiplayer, right? So, any thoughts, guys?
Do you guys
Yeah.
like the later part of it? Like, the thing is, later on, you have D-gun still, right? Like, it just launches everything. And you can transport your commander everywhere. So your commander positioning almost doesn't matter. Like, obviously, it can get shot down really easily if anyone has anti-air, but, like, usually people don't until tier 2 because anti-air is just trash. Like, mobile anti-air. It's just so slow. So, like, is that really what you want? Like, do you really want the commander positioning to not matter at all?
How does this change affect your commander positioning, like the sacrificer to like by moving and like?
I'm saying is that if you like, you're still gonna have a tier 1 transport that can lift the commander. It's just more expensive, whatever it is, right?
Right.
That's what they're saying.
So it
And
means like
then-
if you want to degun something real quick, you can quickly transport your commander. So where he was before you wanted to degun stuff, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't matter if you're out of position, so you can't degun. Like, you just transport there. And this new transport is probably gonna have more HP and stuff to justify the cost or whatever, right? So it's gonna be even more powerful in that regard. So like, I don't know, like I get that they want to go for like a in between sort of thing. Like they really want to keep com transports in the game because that's how it's been forever.
Right.
But like, I don't think it's positive to have it on. Like, as a new player, like you see these things and you're just like, what the hell are they even thinking? Like, without the history to it, it just makes no sense.
I know it's kind of hard to, on the fly, think of suggestions and solutions to problems. I'm thinking more of like putting it in like a T2 role, like the T2 transport can pick up commanders and like, yeah, we'll leave it in the gap, leave it in the game that way. So, you know, when you're 20-25 minutes into a 4v4 AP8 and you need to be in a position with your commander to cloak and degun stuff, players can still get the countermeasures to that in place by that time period. So it's not like completely broken. Like you can just be anywhere, fly anywhere and degun stuff or bomb something, right?
Yeah, I
Yep.
think splitting up also, like the name mentions, like light and heavy, and then maybe the light can even transport several lighter units, and the heavy is more about singular heavier units. You can do it any number of ways, really.
Yeah, I think it should be T2 transport can transport commanders, and there's no extra tier 1 transports. And the T1 transport that we have, by the way, like the only reason it has to be that bad is because of commander transport, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
absolute trash for anything else. So like you can just buff it. You can buff the hell out of it, really.
Well, not too much, right? Because if you drop units behind enemy lines, that is like super powerful, right? Like so they have to be somewhat weak.
But right now they're a joke, so.
Yeah, well, like no one really uses it, right? Like maybe, like I mean, Andy, I've seen you do it. It's maybe slow a few times, like trying to get behind the line drops, right? So it'd be cool to see more drops in the game.
Ubivator's quite good at using them in 1v1s.
Shout out Ubivator.
On Hades Pond, like sending 3 or 4 to the corners of the map in like the mid game.
Yeah, I think it's very map dependent. Yeah.
Well, so I guess the big talk is like there is a consensus, of course. It seems that something needs to be done about transporting the commander, right? And this is the devs' kind of ideas or proposed changes. So if you have feedback, you know, I know there's plenty of ways to get feedback to them. So be sure to communicate to them what you want. That's what I was kind of hoping with this is we can get together and talk about it as one, right? Instead of go in text.
Yeah, personally, I think it indeed has to be on the air plant sides, the change, and not so much on the commander side. But I mean, what the transport can transport is part of that, I guess.
Right.
I'd like to say that even though some of these proposals might not be perfect and people have trouble with them, I'd still be happy for them to come in if it did make some improvement. because I'd rather get to the, I don't know, perfect game state if that's possible in small increments instead of not doing anything whilst trying to find a perfect solution.
Yeah, for sure.
So kind of building off of that, they are planning to make this commander change before the 5v5 tournament. So that's just something that hopefully gets changed sooner than later, right? And no matter what they do, I think even just picking up the commander would be a step in the right direction, I think, right? Removing the T1 transport from being able to pick
Yeah,
up
I
the
mean, that
commander.
just removes a bunch of really game-rating moments where 5 people go for a transport rush. I mean, that's just kind of necessary for the 5v5 tournament to work at all.
Yeah,
and
right,
it's
right.
fine.
Right. I agree, right? And I think it would be a better quality tournament. We have so many skilled teams that are, kind of out there signing up, practicing, and all that. And I'd like to see macro games in a 5v5 setting, right? So I would want the game to devolve into just transport drops.
Well, one note to make is that I usually see them fail. I think they're not fun games. I don't think they're good games, the whole transport rush thing, but I usually see them fail. And I don't think it's that strong. The all-in transport rush,
Right.
It dominated the nation wars. I don't know if you saw those games, Raghna, but
Oh,
Canada dominated with it. They took out Finland, the UK
Oh,
team I
wow.
was on,
Oh, okay.
and won the whole thing.
I did not see that. Okay.
Shout out Canada, right? Yeah, let me pull up a replay real fast so that you guys talk over this. So we got something on the screen. Is that did we kind of cover this topic fairly enough? Does anyone have any more comments they'd like to make before we kind of move on?
No.
I'm just happy to see any change come in, which kind of nerfs commander drops a little bit. It just freshens things up a little bit as well. Makes teams rethink their strategies for these tournaments and stuff like that.
Right. I agree.
Same. I'm really glad that this is coming in. It's great.
And that's good to hear too, Blodir, because from what I understand, you were kind of frustrated with the game at a certain point and didn't really want to play it, right? And that's what we don't. We want players to have fun and enjoy bar, right? So,
well, if it feels like I have to do a coin toss at some point in the game, I'll just play a different RTS,
I don't want to play a coin toss game, right? Like,
yeah.
So we're all in agreement that there seems to be a pretty good consensus that something needs change. So hopefully something comes in and we'll get to enjoy the game with that. So next topic, kind of feeling like the co-op is that maybe Andy or Yudi, would you all like introduce like that co-op communism, like how your takes on it or what you think it is and how it might be affecting the game in a perhaps negative way?
It's quite a different beast in organized games versus unorganized games. So you're kind of random 8v8s, just whoever's online playing. That they tend to be rather uncoordinated, and so if there is a group of 2 or 3 or 4 people in there on one team doing some coordination, it can be very powerful and kind of throw off the balance quite a bit. Whereas for organized tournaments, both teams will be doing that, so it's a bit more even, but is it stronger than it should be? It's hard to say, maybe.
It's not the case with most such games. Like, it isn't any coordinated group of players in any like hub game where you have like a bunch of random people and then a couple of people like they know each other, they play together, they know how to play together, and then they will like vastly outperform the enemy team.
I think Bar makes it super accessible through sharing resources is uncapped, sharing units is uncapped. Whereas you look at games like Age of Empires, they have a tax on shared resources, and you have to build certain buildings first.
Yeah, I like
StarCraft
the
2, you
tax.
can't share units and resources to the same extent.
And Age of Empires, it does become like a standard play to do it. For example, if you play 4v4, you have the pocket positions and you have the front positions, and like there is an established meta about how you should play that. And then the middle ones should like sling resources, they should boom and so on. So there is a similar kind of dynamic.
Is there a meta for slinging? Like last time I played AoE 2, that definitely wasn't meta to sling, at least not in pub games, like maybe in pro games, I don't know.
Well, they still changed the game after so long, and I've played for many years, but yeah, not in the last few years. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm not against coordination, cooperation, and slinging and stuff, but the question is should it be as strong as it is right now? Should there be?
I
Well,
think
I'll
there's something
say
very. I
I'll
think
say
there's
that I
something
don't
very
like it.
good to. I think there's something very good to a game that promotes collaboration. I think that's incredibly a good thing.
I
An
agree.
incredibly good thing.
Yeah.
I like that we have opposite opinions in that I just don't like playing it. You know, like it's just not fun to play, and especially if you play like 8v8 and then you play like nuclear winter and the back guy walks to the teammate's base and assists it or something like that is so boring. Like, can you imagine anything more boring than that? Being the guy who assists your teammate's factory.
So I've seen very varied opinions on that, and I've seen some people really like playing one side of that and not the other side, and the other way around. So I think the opinions vary quite a lot on that.
If I could add to that is the counter argument, one of the counter arguments to having this resource sharing is the expectation that some players do it. So like say you're in a 4v4 and you're 17 OS and there's a 40 OS player that's like, "Hey, do nothing but make wins and share your like put your sliders down," right? And like that's like you wouldn't want players
Well,
to kind of
why would they?
experience that.
Why would they play in the same lobby? I mean, ideally they don't, right? And that's a huge difference between casual games. In any casual game, you shouldn't have that expectation at all. And if you play at the top level, I think it's good that you have that expectation.
So go ahead.
An
Andy.
experience I found in like the previous 5v5 tournaments when me and my clan were making strategies was some maps, for example, Angel Crossing. The best strategy we thought of was one where we only had 3 factories on our team with between 5 players. So there's always going to be 2 players there who aren't really doing very much, and it's not very fun for them. But the question is, do we try and make it fun for everyone, or do we just do what we think is the best strategy?
I mean, I think
I think there's always something you can do, right? You can share units that they
Yeah.
can micro, and so on. There's so much to do in a 5v5. There's tons and tons to constantly be microing.
Yeah, so
I don't think it's.
well, we came to that decision that we were sharing units and stuff, and they were microing certain things, but those units would die, and then they'd have to be asking people for more, and they're busy doing other stuff, and
well,
I just think the game is less fun for those people than it is the others.
well, like what
They have
Is,
less agency in what they're doing.
that doesn't it become about coordination and about learning how to coordinate really well?
I think that's a good point. Yeah, it's like if the game is like the game is rewarding players who work together, which I think is a good part about like a strategy game. I think that works, and I mean I don't know about y'all, but
And incredibly rare, I would say, to this degree. I mean, I can't even think of any other game that does this amount of collaboration in real time this well. I think.
But do you think, Ragnar, if the game say had a 10% tax on resources shared, the game would be better or worse?
But then, what happens to your energy that overflows naturally? Is there a tax in there too? Like that gets
Yes.
into weird territory, right?
I'm not
I
saying
think the
there's a
answer is
perfect
yes.
solution exists. I'm just asking, in theory, would it be a better game, do you think?
So I think there's some strategies where, especially in 5v5, you can like funnel resources and you can do some what I think is really fun creative strategies where like you rush a tech 2 lab where you rush something else or a lot of units out of less labs, or you can play spread out, and it depends a lot on the map. If it's a really large map, you probably don't want to concentrate all your metal in a one tech 2 lab, but if it's a tighter map, you might do so. I think not having that tax and having that real flexibility adds so much depth to the game as well.
I agree.
And a conversation that you have with your team, that is, I think, one of the most fun conversation, is that strategizing about how you're going to best utilize the team's resources and coordinate together, basically.
I would like
I
to.
agree that it's interesting and this is like unique to the game. It's just that I don't like playing it.
It is
I
kind
think
of
that's
annoying.
gonna be the opinion for a lot of people, right? Like, it just comes down to how many people like it and how many people don't like it, I guess.
Well, I think if you play casual, that's totally fine, and you don't have the expectation to that. You don't have to do that. But I think if you play really competitive and you don't like collaborating, then maybe 1v1 is more your thing now.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I
Like, if
mean,
you
you can't really tell other people how they're supposed to enjoy the game. So it's just some people are gonna like it, some people won't like it. Ideally, we'd have as many people enjoying the game as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. But if you combine very competitive with team, isn't collaborating and the coordination like the natural place you go with that?
Yes.
So and if you take away either of those, so either you don't turn it into competitive, but it's casual, that's not an issue. And then if you take away the team, so it's a 1v1, it's not an issue either. So I think there's a good spread there where everyone is happy in that sense.
Hmm.
I mean, you'd want as many people to participate in like a 5v5 tournament as possible. So if some people don't want to participate because they don't like the meta being all about sharing, which right now, I mean, I don't know, but maybe in the future when people get better, maybe it will be even more egregious. I'm just saying that you basically just need to balance how many people actually like it and don't like it, because I think it is really cool, but at the same time, playing it for a lot of people are not gonna like it, like me.
I think the current state of and level of cooperation is like the lowest it will ever be in the future if nothing changes. It's only going to get more and more kind of streamlined and
Yeah.
I think there's a huge amount that you can do in terms of with 5v5 in terms of coordination. Like there's still unexplored strategies and everything that I think are fun and creative, but that's just my view on it.
Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if like the maps were slightly more interesting, more active. There was more space to move around, more maxes in the 5v5
Yeah, I think
tourney. Like,
maybe
and
larger maps would give more.
yeah.
Well, yeah, there's definitely something to the maps in the sense of like, okay, if you really don't like this heavy co-op, you can do a very laney map, 5v5, where you don't have the room to do that because you really need to contest your lane and everything, and you
Right.
can't really spare much to it. So that can definitely be a huge factor.
No, but if you do a big and open map, then you have to have a factory for yourself. Like, you just can't get away
Yeah,
with people not building factories. So, like,
that's what
that
I
type
mean.
of thing helps, yeah.
That's what I meant to say.
You, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Co-oping, or how you think it affects the game negatively or positively?
I've been just listening, very poor talker. Sorry, guys. I'm not really contributing much.
No, it's fine. I mean, do you enjoy it personally, or is it something you think could be like adjusted a bit, or?
Yeah, competitive level, I think it's fine. Just casually, a lot of people don't really like it because they might seem even unfair.
Right.
Especially when you saw like Factor Live 50 OS abusing co-op with a 10 OS player, right? And a lot of the casual players were complaining about it because it was too unfair. Because like you shouldn't have really a high level player partying up with a low OS player, right? And abusing the OS system.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
but that's more of a pub game problem, right?
Yeah.
yeah. It seems like a
But
separate
when it
issue
comes to
even.
competitive,
Like,
then yeah.
sorry to cut you off there. Yeah, I just I think like abusing the OS seems like a little bit of a separate thing. Like, yeah, I guess like, in that specific case, he was using the resource sharing, kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where you just kind of tell a lower level player to sit there and like capture the mexes and just make wins, right?
You can even go further than that. I mean, let's say you have a friend that's new to the game. You have him join, and every time he just resigns, and you take his commander.
Right.
He resigns, so that means that his OS keeps going down because he never gains OS, and you get his commander, and you play with two commanders, and it's like an easy win. If they're low OS and you're high OS and you have two commanders, it's almost a guaranteed easy
Right,
win.
right. Shout out Yuri for the 1v8 matches here. Those were kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Which maybe shows like how I think that really showed how much of a casual lobby problem it actually is, right? It's like how inefficient 8 players are with resources compared to like one person controlling it, or like a one high level person controlling it, right? So
That's to be expected, I think.
yeah, I'm kind of with you guys though, and like in the competitive setting, it seems like there's a little bit of consensus here that it's good, not good for the game. It like helps maybe induces creativity or discussion, cooperation, all that, right? Which I think is good for like any team game, right? Anything else, Andy, you'd like to add to that? Blodir?
No.
Could move on to the next topic. There's a few left we wanted to get out there. So it'd be like Resbots, Shuri's, Mines. Any one of those y'all want to pick up or introduce, perhaps?
Okay, res bots. I
You
mean, it's
take-
obviously a ridiculous concept that you can res for 100% of the value, and the unit spawns on the enemy side of the map. Okay, yeah, you have to pay energy, right? But that's like negligible almost. Well, not negligible, but it's not that much. So, I mean, it's just a ridiculous concept to begin with, because like imagine attacking later on in the game, and all you're doing is leaving Rex to the enemy, like in
Yeah.
like FAF or something. Like it's bad already, where you don't want to attack ever later on because you're just gonna be leaving Rex. But in this game, like it's actually like the only reason to attack is like in the early game, where you can actually kill tier 1 mexes like with just a single tick or whatever.
Right.
But after that point, like if you're attacking with 10 tanks, the game is instantly over once the enemy kills the tanks. Even if you get like 2-to-1 value, you still lose.
So I would say, and the positive thing about it is that it's a comeback mechanic. That I think is really good to have, so that the game, like, oh, you have a tiny advantage, the game is not immediately over. There's like ways to come back, right? And if you look at, for example, 1v1s or something like bots versus vehicle, there's some really good asymmetric advantages to each, and I think that the resbot makes the bot factory so strong, and gives a huge advantage that the vehicle factory doesn't have, and I think it's really nice to have.
I think that's a fair point. I'd be curious to know like how, say if you remove just the res mechanic from the res bot, how you would need to buff bots in like 1v1s or team games to make it
Well,
viable.
I played a bunch of games, including 1v1s, and I always played bots regardless of the removing res. So I removed res in my balance patch, and I still always played bots every single game. Just because, well, to be fair, I do play like the kind of map which has a little bit more mexes than like it's not like Red Comet or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
Like that one, maybe I wouldn't go bots, but like in most maps, I'll still go bots, just because like grunts are really strong at defending and stuff, whatever. Right.
So I think, for example, vehicle cons being way faster and having higher build power make them super strong for expanding on certain maps, especially like bigger maps where there's a lot of travel distances and stuff like that. So I think the vehicles have very strong advantage. And I think at certain level, you have to switch to vehicle because you just can't fight the huge vehicle army anymore. So
Yeah.
bots
It's
are
just
kind of
opening with bots and then switching to vehicle.
Yeah.
Which isn't like, that's not an issue in the matchup. It's because you don't have res bots. That's not like a possible thing. Like you can definitely like.
Yeah, and you always do that regardless, right?
Right.
Like even now in the game, it's not like you're just gonna stick around with a tier 1 bot lab. You're just gonna make your 2 res bots and then switch to vehicles.
What I notice in 2v2, what I really like is having one bot and one vehicle, for example, because the vehicle expands so much faster, but the blitz and incisor are so expensive. You like to have a couple of the regular bot infantry units because they're so much cheaper.
Mhm.
But in relation to the resbot, I think the resbot gives the bot lab more staying power. Otherwise, it has to switch to vehicles like very early.
Anyway, before we move on too much from Resbots, Resurrecting was in original TA and 0K, both of which I've played. but it was much slower in those games. I find in bar it happens very quickly, too quickly in my opinion. I wouldn't mind it staying in the game. I'd just like to see it not be as rapid,
Hmm.
because you lose a rec field, and if you can't get units onto that within 30 seconds and they have 10 res bots, it's over. The game just
Oh,
it's done.
yeah. Res bots are very fast and have very high build power.
Yeah, I still think res bots and resing would still be a common and popular strategy, even if they had like a third of their current build power.
I also want to say that res bots, even without res, are still OP. Or like they're still a massive advantage for the bot lab, just for the
Well, I
recon.
think, and I think because they're so fast,
Mm-hmm.
res bots are really fast.
Yeah, you still see them built a lot just for the early game tree and rock sucking.
I think maybe not. Like one change that I think is really good is cost also, because you stay familiar with the unit as it is, so you don't have to rethink. Oh, now this unit has changed. How strong is it now? How fast does it go now? I'm not sure. But if you change cost, your familiarity with the unit stays.
I don't really care how it changes. I just think it's too strong at the moment in its current iteration.
I would add to that. Sorry, what Blodir mentioned earlier is like it makes you not want to attack, right? On top of the defender's advantage, suddenly there's like this resbot advantage, which just makes you play defensively and never attack, which I don't really think is good for an RTS. So.
Yeah, when we get onto mines, it's kind of a similar thought, but I think stuff that
Yeah.
encourages just defensive gameplay and discourages attacking just makes the game more boring.
I think mines do that even more. Yeah. I know you hate them, Randy.
But before we
I
get
think
on,
everyone does.
before we get onto that, guys, Yudi, did you have anything you want to add to like the resbot conversation? Your thoughts? How you would change it? Is it?
I think they're fine. They might be OP, but I think they're fine in my opinion, honestly.
If I could make a change to the resbot, I would have it such that resing you have to put back in the metal cost, the difference between the full cost of the unit and the rec that's there. You would have to put back into it.
I agree.
I think that would be a cool little change.
It is true that as it is now, you can kind of gain metal by resurrecting it and then reclaiming it, which is a bit odd, I guess.
Wow, that's actually a good point. I'm sure if you had a widget or like an AI, you could with infinite APM,
Yeah.
you could just.
I think a widget does exist for doing exactly that,
Okay.
but obviously it can't be used in tournaments with the correct settings.
Yeah, all the more reason to turn on that disable custom widgets when you get into competitive games, right? Do you think there is a consensus that the resbot needs changed in some way, or like by and large, is it? I know Blodir, you have a very strong opinion on it, but
I don't think the resbot is that disruptive in the sense that it breaks the game, and I think most people have gotten used to it, and they're not even thinking about it. It's not even much on their mind.
oh, I think about it all the time in 1v1s because it's like, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean the unit is on the mind, but not like, oh, should this unit be here?
Another effect I think it has on the games, it kind of makes the map feel smaller, because once a battle starts somewhere and wrecks start to pile up there, that's where every fight's going to be until that wreck field has disappeared.
Right.
But if there's no resbot, I think that would still be the case.
Well, it wouldn't be
Yeah,
so
people would
contentious,
reclaim
right?
it. That happened in TA, but it wasn't
I think-
as big a deal. It was a
think
big deal to
reclaim-
get the wreck field, but it wasn't the game is over now, you didn't get the wreck field.
Reclaim
And
is kind of busted too.
You have to learn how to use resbots in 1v1, I think, to play really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you click on the units and you rest them.
But that's like that's a result of the balance. We can change the balance, and then it just changes what
I mean,
it means
it's
to
not
be a
that
good 1v1 player.
it's not that hard. Yeah, exactly, right? And it's not that hard to use response anyway. Like, it really isn't. And like, reclaim is going to be similar. And I think reclaim is too strong, by the way, as well. But it's obviously not nearly as egregious. So I'm just gonna call it
Take your
fine for now.
battles.
Yeah.
Well, so still, I think it's really good to have reclaim for the comeback mechanic. Because if you don't have reclaim, it snowballs really quickly the game, and then like as soon as someone has a small advantage, the game's kind of already over, and you're just waiting for it to be over.
Kind of true, but like the reason is because there's not a lot of other compact mechanics, right?
So what could you add to the game such that by removing res or reclaim, it wouldn't
Well,
be...
I think in an RTS in general, what you'd want to do is to have the early game units be low volatility and the late game units be high volatility. So you become like more and more volatile as the game goes on. That allows people to do comebacks,
Mm.
and it also just like makes you be able to play the game every game, and
Because
it guarantees that the game ends eventually.
also with the Rex, it means that the fights, where you take the fights, is incredibly important. So it's a consideration you really have to take. Like, oh, do I want to take a fight here? Am I going to be able to fight for the reclaim and everything? So I think that makes you like consider more things.
Right, but as we see in bar currently, or what I see is, it's just like it facilitates defensive play, right? Like you don't want to commit to attacks because of the threat of res and reclaim. So it's
So I think what you want to do a lot is attack expansions rather than the main base, for example. I think that's a lot of the time that the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably disagree with the phrase. It makes you consider more things. I think it just makes you consider different things, and the
Yeah.
options that you have are slightly different.
I mean, in general, it just makes you fight in that one location and not fight anywhere else in the map.
which is...
I mean, there's a lot of gameplay which is just kind of, you'll see a ball of units that someone's attacking and they have like a dozen res bots behind it just ready to suck it up, and that's fine. That's a style of gameplay, but I don't find it that interesting, and I think it's a very snowbally style of gameplay,
Yeah.
and it's a very strong one. So
Perhaps it could be addressed. I really think that just paying the difference between the rec cost and the unit cost would be a nice little change to the reclaim and resbot mechanic, such that it was...
Well, also besides is the balance change of resing, it also in practice slow down resin immensely, because a lot of players usually don't have any metal in the bank, so you need to get your extra income into that, so that would slow it down a lot. Just even if you don't change the build speed.
personally, I don't really mind which of the 3 or 4 suggestions we've
no.
heard. I think any of them would make a gameplay improved.
I'm just noting the side effects.
I think we kind of covered that pretty well. Andy, you alluded to just mines kind of having the same mechanic or same effect on the game, slowing it down, making it more defensive.
I just, as soon as I hear mines have been detected, I just think this is going to be a shit game now. Don't bother attacking, just tech up. Let's try win this at 25 minutes instead of 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think anyone who's used mines a little bit can agree, or played against them a little bit, and like especially in like 1v1,
Well,
can agree with that.
There's players I hate playing against because I know they're making mines. Like I think thinking like Ubivader and Lapaka are just like just they make mines. I hate playing against them, honestly. So
well, it's just getting more and more common now.
Yeah.
Sashgrim's making them. I've just started making them.
Right.
Let's say let's say you're gonna play against someone that makes a lot of mines. You could counter it with scouts ahead of time, but you do have to make them ahead of time.
But the light mines are like the same cost, right?
Light mines cost less metal than, well, 3 light mines cost less metal than a tick. 1 medium mine costs less metal than a tick. So even if you get perfect 1 tick to 1 mine, which you're not going to do, you're still losing metal. It's ridiculous.
The energy cost is really high, though, no?
It's about the energy. It also drains your energy.
But it doesn't drain much. That's true. But early game, the energy is important.
Yeah, I saw a game where it was like Sashkarin had 65 medium mines, I think, and that just drained less energy than one energy converter. And he was on plus
Yeah, that's
1500
true.
energy. It didn't really
Right.
Yeah,
make anything noticeable different.
And I think if they would drain more, you would be more considerate of where you put mines, and that's maybe a bit more interesting if you can place less mines, but I mean not remove them entirely. But then you're like, where am I gonna put mines? You know?
Yeah, when you get past that early game stage where you kind of worried about your energy, you've got 2 or 3 cons making wind farms, and now you don't really care. You can just slap down mines everywhere, and it's
I mean,
always so cost efficient.
even if they were more expensive, like only one faction has ticks, right? Like there is no way of dealing with them. Pretty much, like I haven't really seen the Minesweeper being used to any effectiveness at all. So there's no way to counter them other than ticks, which don't work obviously right now. But like even if they were nerfed, then still there would be no way of countering them unless they were nerfed like insanely amounts and Grunts could just run over them. But
There's also something that the Juno is a bad unit in the game and needs to be reworked, and there needs to be something else instead of the Juno. Because I mean the Juno is an amazing counter, but it's just such a like the mechanic of the Juno and everything. It needs to be changed.
I think Juno's a counter in 8v8s. I don't think it is in 1v1s.
It's too expensive.
Yeah, no, it's super expensive. It's super expensive, and it's clunky, and yeah, it doesn't work well, the unit, like how you use it and everything like that.
I would agree. Like in 1v1s, like mines are very strong, and the counter to them, either mine sweeping with the mine is like that's not really a thing, right?
No, too much micro too.
Yeah.
The difficulty in trying to clear them compared to the difficulty of laying the minefield is like ridiculously different.
Which is like oppressive in some ways. Like you said, Andy. It's like, as soon as you hear it, you know it's just going to be this like long drawn out game, right? It's not. Which I don't mind playing long macro games. I just wish like how to deal with mines was a little more, just a little easier. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
I never had an issue with mines, especially on big maps, right? The only issue I see with mines are on map on Canis River, because you only have 4 accessible lanes,
right?
Which is pretty easy to cover. But on maps like Comet Catcher, I feel like historically, I don't think people have been complaining much about them, because it's not as easy to set it up, because the map is way too big for you to cover all the areas with mines.
I mean, you're just fighting all the time in Comet Catcher because all the mexes are next to each other, so you can't really set up, like there's no line to set up.
Yeah.
Also, on Comet Catcher, you're perpetually out of energy. On Comet Catcher, you're constantly needing more energy, and the mines cost energy, and it's into your energy.
You don't think if we saw everyone using mines like in every game, it wouldn't be an issue? Because really, I think that's why it's not an issue. Is it's not as popular. Like, what if every like 20 OS player just put mines everywhere in every single game, right?
People would encounter ways of countering it, probably.
Yeah, but would it be so fun?
Countering with what?
Give us these ways of countering.
I mean, on big maps, for example, right? It's pretty easy to counter if you're very aggressive early on, right? You cannot really give your opponent to, make mines everywhere. On maps like Canis, it might be easier, but on big maps, open maps, like pretty much every map, it may be easy for the aggressor to, counter the mines before they get to build the mines. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's more like if it's an even game, getting into like that 15-minute stage, and someone just starts slapping down mines. It's
and they even counter like with your Tech 1 mine layer, you can even counter bulls and everything like that. You don't even have to worry about fighting Tech 2.
I
like the mine abuse in the game that you're showing right now.
Yeah, it kind of coincidentally.
Yeah.
I sorry, Raghna. I'm sharing my screen, and there's just a game going on right now with some mines like just spread out over the map. Even when you were talking about that Juno, showing the Juno for you. Well, it's a good segue to our next topic, which would be Shuris. Like, what do you guys have any hot takes on Shuris, or how would you like to introduce talking about them?
Well, again, they reduce attacking potential, especially in team games. The
Yeah,
anti-airs can't keep up with your units, and they're expensive anyway, so you cannot have them for the early game raids to begin with. So they just shut down all aggression, basically.
Yeah,
I remember last 5v5 tournament, it was like, okay, if we scout that they've got core rare, just no one do any raiding. Because it's just going to not do anything.
right. And like, would you say that's good for the game, or is that?
It's a big aspect of the game which you just are like, okay, we can't use raiding as a tool in this game because shurikens exist.
It's. I don't know about you guys, but I think rating should be a thing in RTSs. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
something you should be able to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of probably could be adjusted for sure. They seem strong at like every level of play. They're good in like AV8s. They're good in 1v1s and like low skill lobbies and pro lobbies, right? And that's like Andy was saying, the past 5v5 tournament, like we saw a lot of it used.
Look, one of the issues with Shuri's is that if, like, let's say you're playing AV8. Now, AV8, obviously, Blasphemous, horrible. You shouldn't play them. But if you're playing AV8, if you do the mistake, you're gonna have an air player on either team, right? And one guy makes like 3 Shuris, and the other guy just spams fighters. The fighter guy still can't really fight because one guy puts down one anti-air turret and he kills all the inties, fighters, in like 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think there's a massive issue in air bounce in general. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like all air fights last for like nanoseconds, right? Like everyone just shoots each
Right.
other once, and that's the air fight. And then like you can never fly with enemy base, well, unless it's like super late game, you have like 300 fighters.
So
But like before that, you just cannot fly over the enemy base, otherwise you lose them. So it doesn't matter if you have fighters. It's like fighters are only a defensive tool.
Yeah, I'm currently testing and trying out a air rework where the fights last quite a bit longer. But another thing I'm interested in is, for example, making the vehicle missile truck faster,
Oh, that's
so you can send it along with
yeah.
your raiding units.
what was that, Yuri? Sorry.
That was the idea I also suggested as well
Making the
a
missile
few
truck
weeks
faster.
ago.
Yeah. It's necessary, I think. The only issue is that the design of the unit is such that it has long range, right? Like against land as well.
Yeah,
And
and
so
when
you
I
don't
was
want to
working,
have something.
it didn't have land attack in what I was
Okay.
testing.
Only air. Only
Yeah,
anti-air?
that's fine then.
Yeah, I think I've seen or played with like 3 different air reworks. So Raghna's got one, Mitvit has one, and Blodir has his Tweet Def. And I think all 3 made air better than it is currently. So I just want to see.
It's huge. It's pretty huge. I mean, I've been working on it for a long time, and like the considerations are huge, and like the impact, and you have to think of like all the different interactions and everything like that, and it's a pretty big deal to make such sweeping changes.
Yeah, but we're starting with a pretty low bar, I think, in terms of quality of gameplay for air. So I think any
Yeah.
changes at the moment, there's lots of ideas out there that are good. I think one common thing that people didn't like was fighters attacking ground, but I think most
Yeah.
other changes people have enjoyed when they've been tried. I know Lost Edmund did some air rework lobbies where he hosted games with them, and I think
Those are
people
fun.
generally found them quite more enjoyable, except for the fighters attacking ground bit, of course.
Yeah, I personally did like a way bigger change that needs way more testing because it's so far away from the general ID. For example, one big thing I was thinking about is having fighters shoot in 360 arc, just like land units can, which I think makes them
Remove micro.
microable. Yeah, you can micro them because as is now,
Well,
they can only shoot in front of them. So you absolutely do not want to micro them as little as possible, so they keep shooting as much as possible.
well, in FAF, like air micro is a big thing, and they can indeed just shoot in front of them.
I don't mind air micro and FAF. I think it's like
It's good.
it's
Yeah,
it's
I
better
like
than
it.
what we have. I'd say. I'm not comparing the two, or sorry, not like trying to disparage bar to FAF, but like the air micro is pretty good in FAF.
Even
If
OTA air micro is good fun.
Yeah, but if any of you would like to help me test, or anyone watching, whichever, I'd be really happy to have some fresh eyeballs on it, and because every time I play with someone and I test it out, they have some new insight of it, and it helps me iterate and change it. So anyone welcome to hit me up.
Yeah,
think
I
a good-
think just the health things are probably the main thing, and
I think a good.
reducing
Sorry, go on.
reducing damage from ground to air things as well, possibly. Also, another thing I'll say that I don't like about air is the side distance of air units. Like, I know conceptually you want to do it like, but you want to have a scout in your army. But in practice, the scout just dies. The scout just dies in one shot to some anti-air. Like, even if you have like 10 of them, they still just all die and then you don't see anything again. It's just like, come on, just give them air, like some side radius.
So sorry if I can jump in here. I'm sharing my screen, Blodir. I have your tweet that pulled up here. It's also being
Yeah.
recorded right now. Do you you were talking about line of sight? Is there like, do you want to like introduce this or just talk about like what you were thinking putting this together? Because I see a lot of
Yeah.
line of sight changes on a lot of units here.
Yeah, so basically most units that have really scout line of sight just get it increased to around their attack radius. So like this, by the way, exists in FAF as well, where like you're fighting with ASF, which are the tier 3 fighters, and you're trying to chase the enemy, and you have a scout with your army, but the scout goes in front of your fighters, and you lose it. And then like enemy takes a turn, and you never see them again because their side radius is so small. And here it's like even worse, right? You literally just do not see in front of you at all, which is
So
just like, again, like your scouts will never be able to really provide vision. It just removes skill from air. Like you can't, like you really don't have that much skilled expression because anywhere you go, it's basically random whether you're gonna hit that turret or not.
So something I'm exploring personally is since you have like in 8v8, for example, you have like the one air player and they're kind of like the support player. I was thinking that you could do a lot with information warfare with the airplanes as well, and starting in Tech 1, have the scout planes have like much larger side vision, so that, for example, if you have artillery or something like that, you would like an air player to patrol air around you, and then the enemy can try to
I
contest
would
that
love
and this
that.
and
I
that.
would, because it like
So
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
I think air can play much more support role with information warfare. Maybe they give an answer to against jammers or something like that in Tech 2 or something to that regards, but I haven't gotten to that point. But in general, including Tech 1, I think they can have their sight radius increased by a lot, and then the scouts have so much more use, and then you have a reason to fight over air even more so.
I think if you want to do that, you probably want to have more expensive scouts with actual HP, so
Yeah,
that there's
yeah,
some skill expression in avoiding enemy fire and
yeah.
while scouting the enemy. But yeah, that's an interesting idea for sure. I mean, by the way, I know I'm going on about FAF, but you do that in FAF as well.
Oh, okay.
Yudi, do you want to jump in here?
I'm stacking up. Sorry.
Sorry, I saw you were like unmuted. Didn't know if you had something you wanted to add there. So I know there is a consensus that air needs to be addressed or something needs changed or improved upon, I could say, right? Like I think the game is always like in a state of improving, right? So
I mean, there's also just like some really obvious things like the Banshee being bad. Like, can we just buff it? Buff it? Like, what's the issue?
What did you say? Gunship's bad?
Banshee.
Oh,
I mean, the only
Nah,
good thing about Banshee is that mexes in this game like have 0 HP.
yeah, that's
That's
why
like
they're
literally the
good
only good thing.
actually.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really dangerous. It's really dangerous to make a gunship really strong because I mean, if you look at the seaplanes, they're incredibly oppressive, especially against someone that doesn't have air. So let's imagine that you have seaplanes instead of a Banshee, and in 1v1, for example, it become really easy to snipe an enemy and so on. I don't know. Like we have to remember that economy is very very weak in this game and it gets destroyed very quickly. So that's why like fast units need to be weak. Like this is a big thing about bars that a fast unit has to be weak or it's super imbalanced.
yeah,
Gunships
Just
already
I
see
feel-
some play as well.
I feel
It's
like
not like
gunships are
the
strong. People just don't know how to use them, right? Because it's
yeah.
not that easy to
Andy
utilize
does.
them.
He does a good job of using banshees.
Personally, I feel like you're in a solid spot right now. I used them against Ted in the finals, and he won me the game basically.
It can be really good, yeah.
For sure. Just like surprise Shuris are strong, so are surprise gunships, right? So. That's. I don't think that's it. We have one more topic to cover, no? Or is that everything?
Well, we kind of avoided the last one you brought up.
Is it air balance, perhaps, or?
No, we started talking about air balance when you wanted to talk about something else.
No, that's fine. I think we got everything, unless we were kind of cut off. We like segued off of a topic, right? Or sorry, is that are you alluding to like just balancing the game in general between like pub games and like competitive play?
No, I mean, like, I don't remember what it was. Sorry, but just before air balance, we were talking about something else, and then we started talking about air balance.
We talk about shurikens, but that
Yeah.
kind of merges into
Oh,
air
yeah,
balance.
Right.
yeah. But shuriken
Yeah.
specifically, yes. Shurikens specifically, yeah, I think they shut down a lot of raiding, and that kind of slows down the game a lot too, and makes the game a lot more slow paced, which is good and bad. I mean, it's a little bit less volatile, I guess, this way. Because you were talking about comb bombs, and then if someone comb bombs and it's successful, it's like super powerful. But also, you imagine you play 8v8 in one lane, and one guy gets raided, and like he has like his whole base destroyed. And I remember before the Blade Wings became so big, it would regularly happen that someone's just lab gets destroyed within the first couple of minutes, especially in very mixed games with like a high OS versus a low OS. It would happen very regularly, and then the game's also kind of already almost over. So it does make the game less volatile, but I like it if rating gets good. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Should be a way to raid, which is but like part of the comeback mechanic. No, like having
Yeah.
as the game goes on and things get more spread out, right? It's harder to defend everything at once, which Shuris make it possible to defend basically everywhere. You know.
Yeah, and they're super fast and super cheap.
Yep. Well, we've been going at it just right up on an hour here. Is there anything y'all personally believe could be changed in the game, or things you enjoy strongly, right?
I think we've hit all the main ones that I don't like anyway. And I'd hate to dilute the message.
Yeah, I guess.
Well,
I guess
spy bots, I guess. There's
I've said that. I've said quite a few times myself, but I feel like it's important not to make too many small changes to units. Like I think bigger reworks are more interesting. Because you increase a little bit of cost there, and then next week you change a little bit the range there, and so on. And then after some time, you can't even really tell what is what anymore, and it becomes really difficult to have like a disintuitive understanding of the game, and you have to like read through all the changes and relearn basically the game for all these small changes, and I'm not sure that's very good for the game.
I think I can agree, and I would add to that is, would you would want more time between changes to kind of like see how things seep
Yeah.
through and like really permeate into the metagame, right? So
Absolutely, and I think that meta is a huge thing, and I think that people will, go towards one or another with meta, and this unit is super strong, and actually there's a counter for it, but because it's meta, everyone kind of does it, and I think this is a very big thing where units are not necessarily as strong or as weak as people feel that they are. And I think with time that kind of evens things out, and it's not things don't have to be changed all the
Right,
time.
right,
With
right.
time, you get used to it and accept it. Like that's just how things are, and then you can't imagine the game in any other way. That's what happens with time. I don't think it's too fast or anything right now.
No, I'd agree. It's not. We don't see too many changes too quickly, and I would like to say some of the more recent changes have been welcome and really have done well. Like the pawn grunt change. I thought that, like we saw in the last 1v1 tournament, Arm played a lot more, right? Which I thought was great. So
Yeah, that was good.
Honestly,
So
I don't think it was much of a change at all. Like the speed difference is incredibly negligible, I think, and it's more of a perceptual change than an actual change.
I think it's a small change.
no,
Like, I
it's
think they're
not.
still bad, but they're not as bad. So,
Well, that's a good point,
Positive.
Raghna, and I could also add to, like, we saw good ARM players maybe show up, something like that, or it's like players were practicing it such that it became viable. UD, have
Well,
anything?
yeah, and if you think it's viable, then you'll put practice in it and you'll try it, and then like, oh, you can do this, and you'll find new things and so on. And if you never try it, it's super weak. Oh, the other one's super strong, and then you just go along with it, and then you never even try.
I know we're kind of wrapping it up. Blodir, you
Yeah.
kind of touched on just the spy bot. You really kind of quickly want to, or
yeah, I mean, that's a big topic. Like, there's just not that much you can do about spybots to begin with. Like, the only thing you can possibly do is make ticks, but even that is super awkward. And you obviously need the seismic sensor as well, which doesn't move and is really expensive and doesn't have that much range anyways. So, like, just in general, spybots are super oppressive and they remove all aggression, just like the other AMP units, basically.
And I guess it promotes people making spam, which is already something we probably don't want to do.
I don't mind people making spam, but it just feels so bad when you're making these trash units, and especially if you have to make crunts, because like you're just wasting money because they're just so bad at that stage of the game.
I think it's a bit similar to the mines, no?
Yeah, it is.
UD, I saw you unmuting your mic. Do you have something you want to jump in? Or?
No, keep pressing every time.
Oh,
I'm just
okay,
pressing
sorry
it.
about that. Spy bots, like, it's like you can't beat them, join them too. So like you just maybe you would see everyone using them all the time if like players were
I
actually.
mean, I use them all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like more players would use them all the time, right? If like back to like the mines, right? If they're super strong, we don't really see players using them as much. I think as maybe you should. Anyways, we covered a lot of topics, and I hope this encourages conversations throughout the community. Be sure to give your feedback to the devs if you have your own kind of comments. I know we got a lot of strong players out there, and sure have a wide range of opinions on what could be improved upon. So go out there, make your voice heard, right?
Thank you, Barcast, for having us.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Blodir, Yudi, Raghna, Andy. You guys are really nice to have on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, right?
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, podcast.
Yeah, man. Hope you all enjoyed it, and see you in the next one. Leave a like, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Smash that like button.